Hi everyone, this is Emily and I'm a digital transformation consultant with Hyperbots. And I'm really pleased to have Jon Naseath on the call with me, who is the CFO and COO at various small to mid-sized businesses and is currently working with Cantu Capital. So it's really great to have you, Jon.
Pleasure.
So the topic we'd be discussing today, Jon, is balancing granularity in the chart of accounts. And I'd want to kick things off by asking, why is finding the right balance in the granularity of a chart of accounts important for any organization?
The trick is to figure out what's going to be applicable for your business. So you're trying to look at what are the business units and where do you want to look at the full balance sheet and P&L across the entire business. If the chart of accounts gets too granular, it can overcomplicate reporting, increase the workload, make it harder for stakeholders to understand what is that P&L or what is that balance sheet impact for that piece of the business. In retail, for example, you might not want to take every minor office expense separately and break them down, but where do you want to roll it up into things like rent, utilities, marketing, to understand the cost drivers effectively?
Got it. So, great example of retail. Can you provide a few more examples of what might constitute too much or too little granularity levels in different industries?
Sure. Usually we get too much granularity is where different people have been submitting requests of what they want to report on. The
Mhm.
most extreme example I saw is where I was with the company and they had built out their products into the chart of accounts. And that was fine when they had like 5 products, but when they build that out into like 10 products and then 20, and they ended up with like 50 products, trying to figure
Mhm.
out how to tag all that revenue and all that expenses into each individual product offering was just way too granular. Another example could be healthcare sector, where there's medical equipment versus diagnostic equipment, just kind of granularity. And
Mhm.
one of the key things is when you create confusion around which code to tag things into. If a certain expense could be tagged to multiple codes, that just becomes complicated. So making it so it's mutually exclusive, comprehensively exhaustive, so it's unique to figure out
Mhm.
what codes go to is really the key.
Great advice. So, John, how can AI help determine the optimal level of granularity needed in a company's chart of accounts?
Way that I think AI could help would be by looking back at what's happened historically and figuring out kind of what is that common level of granularity across all your expenses, and then come back with a recommended singular level. So no single part is in the revenue is broken out in too much detail where the expenses are at a similar higher level. You want to AI could really help standardize a consistent detail level across the whole business.
Understood. So, just out of curiosity, how can a company change the granularity of its chart of accounts without affecting previously posted data?
We definitely don't want to go back and restate or redo things historically. The main way that I've seen this is oftentimes they'll take a point in time, call it at the year end, usually ideally, and then report from a new perspective going forward. And figuring out what is that old, the new is key. But then creating that mapping that figures out where do you take your old accounts and how are those old ones going to map to the new ones is critical. I think that's the main piece.
Understood. Also, are there any industry standards or auditor requirements that help determine the right level of chart of accounts granularity?
There aren't really any consistent universal standards like historical across industries. It really depends on what business model you have and how you're doing your business model. Different companies, especially publicly reported companies, will align their management reporting and their investor reporting so that investors can see things consistently across industries, or they'll try to, and then even in that example, though, if a company does something unique, then they'll claim why they're unique and special.
Hmm.
But for the chart of accounts, it really is whatever that company and their products and their expenses are. There are opportunities to certainly consider how other companies are doing it and aligning with them in general, but your business is unique, and so you're going to build out different chart of account requirements for your own business.
Got it. And who should be involved in signing off the chart of accounts within a company and why?
This is a lesson learned for me in my life. I was involved. I was driving a transformation project for a very large company, and some of the issues we were talking about were happened, and I was kind of program managing this ERP large quote to cash transformation. We pulled together everybody, every stakeholder. So I remember a large meeting where the the CFO, the controller, internal auditors, representative from external auditors were involved, and they certainly should be. I was driving the overall transformation as program manager, and I was also very focused on all of the data for all of the things that impacted finance. And let's just say that I spoke up too often. I was pushing for detail. I wanted to make sure that everything was considered in everything could be represented from this one chart of accounts. But I didn't take into account the extra effort it would require, or I just wasn't aware of the extra effort it would require to tag everything to all of these dimensions and complexity that I wanted to build into the chart of accounts. People were kind during the discussion, but I realized that I was not I didn't own it, and I wasn't the primary user of it. And so really those are the people that you need to be letting guide how they're going to use it, because the controller primarily owns the chart of accounts. The CFO is a primary recipient of the outputs from it. And then even the internal auditors have requirements and different people, but a program manager with good intention doesn't necessarily own it and should just sit back and listen and make sure things are consistent, but not add additional requirements.
Got it. And any other common mistakes that companies make when defining the granularity of their chart of accounts that, and how exactly can they actually avoid it?
Just really looking at, I use the term blowing out your chart of accounts, meaning there's just too many details. It complicates the reporting. It makes it so that decision making is hard. Although at the flip side, you can go the other direction, because I've seen it where if you start with, say, the generic chart of accounts that comes out of something like QuickBooks, that might not be detailed enough. And then you need to add in different accounts for being able to manage your business. And so what ends up happening is you have your chart of accounts, but then say FP&A or other teams have their own reporting hierarchies that they use. And you want your chart of accounts to be the most useful product or the most useful tool for covering the majority of your business.
Got it. And just to summarize everything we spoke about, John, one last question is, how can AI assist in regularly reviewing and maintaining the integrity of the chart of accounts?
Yeah, great question. Specifically for the chart of accounts, think of it as a living document or a living hierarchy. It's master data. It is the master data for how you're going to manage the financials of your business. And so if that master data isn't complete, consistent, representative of your business, then you're going to have challenges. So one of the ways that AI can help is it can automate kind of that consistent review and make recommendations for how it could be structured, and then also make recommendations for which accounts or which transactions get coded to which accounts. So just kind of helping you manage that master document, manage that master data can be very helpful for that. AI can also detect certain expense categories that are rarely used for similar accounts and make sure they're mapped together, or if something is too detailed, it could help roll it up into a different account.
Got it. Thank you so much, John, for sharing your insights on achieving the right balance in the chart of accounts, the role of AI in this process, and the best practices for maintaining a well-structured chart of accounts. This discussion provided valuable guidance for any company looking to optimize their financial reporting. So thank you so much.